Hey guys, welcome to the Engineered Stitch. Today we're going to be making a 3D printed bag and a matching dress to go with it. Something super elegant and long and flowy. In actuality, this process took like 2-3 months because I've been busy as an engineering major, but I hope this serves as a moderately okay tutorial and hopefully some entertainment. Alright, so the first part of this project, I wanted to make a custom pattern, and to do that, I'm just putting some masking tape to mold it kind of to my body. I kind of started with it going vertical just to get the base work down and then going all the way across. I really wanted this on the front so that I could create a nice like bust template for a corset, and I just really wanted to make sure that I got those cups right. And then I tried to trace the pattern onto the tape before removing it, but removing it was a difficult process. I had to tape some more to patch it up. But yeah, I just went in and I made that little template a little darker. Then once I had that down and my pattern was all traced out, I went to cut it up. So after I cut it, I wanted to save the pattern, so I put it onto pieces of paper and then allowed for some seam allowance to cut it out. And then here I'm just cutting this all out on fabric. I started with a circle skirt. I went online and I used a circle skirt calculator to create like this half skirt. And then afterwards, I just took all of those little bust pieces and cut them out on the scrap fabric before going into the larger pieces of fabric that were left over for the rest of the top of the dress. Here I'm just pinning and then cutting all of those pieces out. Here are them all laid out. Then I got onto sewing. So I first sewed the middle seam of those bust cups because I wanted those to be intact first, and since these are double layered, I sewed them with their right sides together, and then I flipped them inside out just so that they're double lined. That was kind of a difficult process. I had to leave a little gap open at the bottom, but you'll see later that in order to make it so that it's nice and closed up on the actual corset top, I had to sew it closed while laying it flat on the piece that goes under your bust cups. It's kind of hard to explain. But basically now I'm sewing those two like U shapes where your bust cups are supposed to be, and I'm sewing those flat, so that's wrong sides together, just so that it lays super flat for when I sew the bust cups on there. And then afterwards I flipped that inside out and then sewed along the two sides. So then the two sides I could flip inside out so that those are nice and closed, but then the bust cup area doesn't bubble up. You'll see now that I pinned that all together, and then I'm just gonna hand stitch that so that it all lays nice and flat. Then I also went in to hand stitch the zipper just because how I like to sew invisible zippers is hand stitch it first, super close to it, and then going back over it with the sewing machine. Alright, so once I have the bodice zipper all attached, then next up I want to sew the skirt onto the bodice. So you can see I would just pin that all up, and then I'm sewing all around that waistline of the circle skirt. And then we have the bottom half of the zipper to be accounted for. So I just take that part of the zipper and then I pin it just close to the edge and then sew that all up to finish up the dress. Alright, so at this point the only thing left is to attach the straps, so I took some two long rectangular pieces of fabric, sewed them all together in this tube and flipped it inside out, and then I'm attaching this on extremely out of frame, but I just sewed that onto the points that I saw on the dress. And then woohoo guys, we have a dress now! And then onto the bag. Alright, so this is my 3D printed bag assembly. This is all the parts that I have put together, but I'll just do a quick walkthrough of what I did to create this. I started off with the bag body. So for the body of this bag, I actually made this part first. So I just did a sketch on the top plane, and that's just a normal rectangle, and then I made a plane offset from that rectangle, and then I made the sketch for what I wanted the top of the bag to look like. And I kind of wanted it to have those little like bag creases in it, And so then afterwards I took those two sketches and I used the loft feature just to create a smooth transition between those two pieces to really create the shape of the bag. Afterwards I used the fillet tool. I don't know if it's called fillet or fillet, but I rounded the edges of the bag and I just rounded all of those surfaces out. And then afterwards I used the shell tool just to make it so that the top of this bag was hollow and that you can see inside there. And then I made another plane when I was doing like these handle attachments. So basically these are to attach the handles to the bag, but I have like this metal hardware piece that I wanted to fit on it. So this is like gold metal like hardware piece that I got off of Amazon. I'll insert a picture here. But so basically I wanted this part to attach to the bag. So these two pieces to sandwich this wall of the bag, and then the little circle is for the hardware to go through. The first time I modeled this, I didn't do a very good job, and so I ended up remodeling it right over here so that I could split it in half so I can actually print it and get that metal hardware piece through. But that's what that looks like. And then moving on, I did a similar thing with the handles. Let's see. I started on the front plane and then I just created a nice little 3-point arc. And then from there, I made another sketch on the top plane, just a circle. And then that's what I used to sweep all the way across to make that handle shape. And then afterwards, I made another plane just so that I could create the same little circle pieces on the edge there as like the bag attachment parts, the little like almond shaped parts. And so after that I was able to mirror that onto the other side, and then I split the whole thing in half. That way I can print it in 2 parts. So I'm gonna put on the screen how many of each part I printed, but yeah, basically I had to print the halves of these bag attachment pieces for both sides, and then the halves of the handle parts, and then the entire body bag of the bag, and then I put those all together. Now please enjoy some lovely clips of this 3D printing. If you guys haven't seen a 3D printer and how it works, it basically just adds on some filament layer by layer until it creates a 3D printed object. Alright, so now I'm attaching all of those parts in my school makerspace, which is why it's so busy in the background. But I'm just taking those almond-shaped bag attachment pieces and gluing on a ring in between them before sandwiching on those handle parts. And then once I attach them all, I let them out to dry before I had to actually print another round because I didn't print enough the first time around. And so then I grabbed my stuff and then I came back the next day to finish making the bag. But there's some of my stuff that I was carrying. But yeah, I decided to measure out and calculate how far apart these handles actually had to be because I ended up scaling it a little bit differently on the 3D print. But I just finished gluing all those little bag attachment pieces, and then I put those onto the bag. I kind of just like marked where I wanted it to be, super glued onto the bag, and then slid it on, and then I just held that like jet glue in place so that it would all dry, and it dries pretty quickly. But yeah, there's the final result for the bag. And then here's the final look all put together. If you like this project and want to see more, make sure you like and subscribe. See you guys next time.